close. Job is a man in conflict, a man whose faith is being sorely tried. He is in conflict with himself, his wife, his friends, and with God. He does not curse God, but he calls God out and challenges God to face him. Job was a man of great importance, the greatest man of the East, and such the news of his tragic spread throughout the region. Here we are introduced to his friends, three men from a different geographical region. It is likely they too were men of importance in their countries. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar were likely sages, that is, wise men who sought to understand the ways of God in light of human experience. They came as loyal friends, and each of them sought to bring his particular wisdom to bear on Job's plight. Eliphaz insists that Job accept his fate. Bildad offers a defense of divine justice. Zophar declares the mysteries of God are incomprehensible. Incomprehensible, I believe that's what the word is. They come to comfort their friend, but they discovered he refuses to be comforted. There is grief so deep it cannot be comforted in this present age. As they approached Job, they were unprepared for what they saw. No longer a man of dignity, prestige, and power, Job was wasting away. They could not contain their own grief. They wept loudly, tore their clothes, and threw dust on their heads. This signifies a sense of solidarity with their suffering friend, whom they believed was under God's judgment. They will make their voice heard because of you. They will cry bitterly and cast dust on their heads. They will roll in ashes. Then they sat quietly for 7 days and 7 nights. 7 days and nights. This was a traditional mourning period for the death of an important person. In other words, they were expecting their friend to die. It is helpful here to understand the nature of grief. Humans process grief in stages: shock, denial, bargaining, depression, and reconstruction. Shock and denial leave us in a state of disbelief and numbness. As the numbness wears off, we descend into depression. Depression is sometimes expressed in feelings of guilt or anger, and at some point we will begin to process the bargaining. This is an effort to regain control or make sense of the loss. We seek to negotiate with ourselves, with family members, or even God. Finally, we come to the place where we try to reconstruct our lives to regain sense of normalcy. This does not mean we will no longer process grief, but that we have learned to live with the emotional pain. As we read through the book of Job, these stages of grief become apparent. At this point in the story, Job and his friends are in shock and disbelief. They are silent for 7 days because no words can express their sorrow. When we are seeking to comfort family members or friends who are in deep grief, we are often tempted to console them with words. However, comforting words are meaningless with someone in shock. Job needs his friend's presence. Job and his friends sat in silence because silence is what they needed. They needed time to process their grief. You know, we all have times of grief, and we lose our loved ones, and we had some people have a real rough time with it, but it's hard to give them up, But the best thing to know, if they're living right, then one day you're gonna get to go and be with them again. If you live right and keep your heart right, you'll get to walk down them streets of gold with them. I look forward to going to heaven to see my loved ones that are there. But Job, he lost the whole family, everything. He lost everything he had, and was struck with boils and sores on his body, So I can about imagine how he felt. I mean, you don't know how somebody feels, but you can just imagine how the grief and and the depression and things he went through, because God had really blessed him. He loved God, and he never did turn his back on God. Even through all these situations, he never did turn his back on God. But I know he often wondered the whole time it was going on, God, where are you at? Why is this happening to me? We all feel that way sometimes. God, I just don't know where you at. Got this problem, this situation, but like I said a while ago, God's not going anywhere. He's still there. I think he lets us go through things sometimes just to test our faith. And that's what he was doing to Job also. He was testing his faith. And it took a lot of faith, I know, to hold on to that unchanging hand. We have to really, really be strong. If let it get us down, the devil's going to be there knocking on the door. But we got to really pray and keep our eyes on God when things like this happen. Right, a lot of people, That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and a lot of times when you're like this, you'd rather not nobody come around. You just rather be by yourself. Sometimes you just want to get somewhere and and just try to get your act together. That's the way I look at it. But sometimes it's hard. But God, like I say, still got you. He still got you back. And the Bible also says that He'll give you that peace. That peace that surpasseth all understanding. And but that's why we have to really hold on to Him. And like I said, Job, I probably would have shot myself if I'd have had a gun. But especially with them sores and boils all over your body, that's enough to make a man go crazy anyway. He could. Mm-hmm.
Until all this went on with me, I got where I couldn't even pray no more.
Mm-hmm.
I would sit at night or when I was by myself and cry, and a song would pop up, and I would sing. And then I would on Facebook, I would be hunting songs. I said, just give me a song, God.
Yeah.
A song in my heart, do something. And the day Daddy passed, I had no more tears. It was like when you say your mouth was dry. I crawled in the bed with him and I held him, and all I done was sing. I didn't know what now, but it comforted me, and I hope it comforted him.
Yes.
But I always read that, and I thought, well, they always would sing in jail and in whatever. But it was a comfort.
Yeah.
I had no more prayers. I felt like I was worrying to death for 4 months. Help me, give me comfort, give Daddy peace, whatever. And I would just sing. Sometimes I turn that TV down, and I just start hunting a song.
Yeah.
God will come and comfort you. It's not
Yes.
what you think it is. It ain't like it's going to make it all better right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
But I never felt to the point I wanted to,
Yeah.
and God was there.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. He's always there. He just like she said, he may do it with different for each one of us. But it is, like I said earlier, it's just wonderful to know that if they're saved and they're going to heaven, it makes it easier. But like I said, all he had to go through, I just wonder, it's a wonder that he didn't turn his back on God. But it would be easy to do when you got all these troubles and griefs and trials and tribulations. Just to say, well, God, you don't want to help me, then I'm not going to do anything for you. But we can't do that. We have to really hold on to God and not turn our back on Him. It's I think the best thing that helps us, and like Jody said, she couldn't pray, but the best thing we can do is just pray, and ask God to give us that peace, and like when we somebody passes away and then, you know, family has the wake and a funeral, you know, it's good to have people to come by and, you know, tell them, for you to tell them you're sorry, you know, for the loss and all, but still that just eases it a little bit, you know, but, still yet. These three friends come to see him, and they said a while ago, you know, that they tried to tell him, you know, what God was doing for him and all, but, you know, we don't, like I say, we don't really know what to say to anybody. I don't. That's why a lot of times, you know, I'm not one that's real big on going to funerals and wakes and things like that. I don't really know what to say to anybody, but I know we all don't, you know. But, you can ask my wife. I don't like to go, and but sometimes we have to do what we have to do. You know, you just have to go on and do what, you know, you feel led to do. I know if you don't see me there, just don't feel hard about me, you know. But most of the time, people don't know if you came or not, you know, unless your name's on that little book. But anyway, we're going to move on, and we're going to read Job 3, 1 through 10. Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there's a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above. Neither let the light shine upon him. Let the darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for the night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Lo, let the night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it and curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the doors of my mouth, of my mother's womb, nor did sorrow from mine eyes, nor hid sorrows from my eyes. After 7 days of silence, 7 is the number of completion, Job broke his silence in a speech filled with rage. The theme of cursing returns. Here it will be helpful to understand how humans of the ancient Near East understood blessing and cursing. God blessed creation, and creation was fruitful and multiplied. God blessed Abraham, and his descendants became a great nation. Jacob blessed his sons and grandsons. On the other hand, God cursed the serpent and the ground. Noah cursed his grandson Canaan. God's people are forbidden to curse their parents, their rulers, and God. Words of blessing and cursing were prophetic pronouncements that became binding. Words are not empty but powerful to bless or curse. Job curses the day of his birth because his suffering had become unbearable. Likewise, his understanding of God had been shaken to the core. He has lived a blameless life and prayed daily for his children, all to no avail. His devotion to God seemed futile. Now, not only does he want to die, he wants the day of his birth to perish. He wishes he had never been born. Job does not curse God, nor does he curse himself nor his parents, but he is on the edge, even leaning over the cliff. But in his deepest depression and fiercest anger, he does not cross the line. To do so would be foolish, and Job is no fool. Job's wonderful world has given way to chaos. He directs his rage to all the creation. Of all creation, he declared the order of creation has given way to when the earth was without form and void, Instead of the light of day, Job declared the darkness of night. Instead of abundance of life, Job declared death. He desired that his birthday not be celebrated, but rather that is to be seized by darkness. His world is void of gladness and filled with sorrow. Creation is not fruitful, but barren. In Job's mind, creation is not good. He desired that even the stars of heaven be darkened, so utter darkness filled the earth. In his anger and sorrow, Job is imagining that apocalyptic end to the world he has known. You know, Job is in such pain and grief that he just curses his own birth. You know, he just don't want to be around no more. But you know, sometimes the way he feels, he probably feels like, you know, if I could die, I'd be a lot better off. I'd feel a lot better, you know. And I think that's, you know, that's the way I would feel if I had to go through that situation, you know. And like I said, even all them boils, if you ever had a boil on your body or something, you know how sore they get. And he had them all over him, you know. That would be enough for me to go ahead and take it out, just, you know, do away with it. But I know a lot of people that has took their own life because, you know, they was in pain. And you wonder sometimes about, you know, if God would, if you would, you know, I had heard a lot of people say, do you think people go to hell if they take their own life? But, you know, the Bible said God giveth and God taketh away, you know, but you just wonder sometimes if you're in real pain and you're real sick. I believe if you took your life to get away from that, I kind of feel like God would, you know, I don't believe he would send you to hell for that. But if you know, I don't know that for sure because I can't judge. I'm not God. I won't really know. But you know, that's the way I feel. But you know, it takes a sick person, you know, a real sick person to take their life. You know, my neighbor, I won't call his name, but we came home one day and he had shot himself, and I couldn't believe it because this man, always happy, you know, never, he seemed like he didn't never have any bad days, you know. And but his wife had died, and he got in a bad financial situation and things. But I never would have thought that man would have killed himself. You know, he's just, like I say, taught Sunday school at church. You know, seemed to be happy all the time. He just, there was something that caused him to take his own life. But, you know, you just wonder about these things. Oh, I do anyway.
Brother Tony, you know, we've been asked that a lot in ministry, and families that are grieving. They need something to hold on to, and, you know, what we can tell them is, you know, we serve a merciful God.
That's right.
But we serve a God that knows the very thoughts, the inner workings of your being.
Yes.
He knows.
That's right.
He knows. We don't know what happens at the time of death.
Yeah.
We can't offer that hope. But he knows what they're going through, what they're feeling, where they're at. And he's a loving and merciful God.
That's right.
And that's all we
Yes.
can trust him.
Yeah, that's right.
He has the final say so.
Yes. Amen.
There is one suicidal that was mentioned in Scripture, and that was Samson. I mean, there was others, but Samson was one of them, and he's in the chapter of Hebrews chapter 11.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, he grabbed them pillars and, you know, he brought the house down upon himself.
Yes.
So I don't know. We don't never know about them things. We just got to trust the Lord.
Yes, that's
A
right.
lot of people get so pressed, you know, you don't never know what goes through people's mind.
Yes, that's right.
Just trust the Lord with it.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, that's right. You don't really know. You know.
We had a pastor, I used to go before I started here, I used to go to Pentecost Sunday church down 73 East there. And we had a pastor there, he was from Visco. And, now I think it run into the family, nervous problem, and he was on, medicine for it. And, I talked to one of the members, and he said he never snowed. He committed suicide.
Yeah.
And he signed himself out, is what it was. And the doctors told him not to
But it was because he had just still not weaned off that medicine. He went off the medicine, and so they say the medicine is what caused this.
Yes, yeah. There are a lot of people that I think some of the medicine that they give people causes them to do these things, you know. I do, you know. But, you know, Job, he didn't ever contemplate suicide, but he just, you know, he just wished that he had never been born. And I've heard people say that before. Even I probably said it myself. You know, I'd just rather be gone, rather be dead. You know, I have to go through some of this stuff. But you know, if you know God, it's a whole lot easier to make it through these situations and these trials. And but you know, like I say, we just got to hold on to Him. Let me read a little bit more here. I'm not going to get you none of this. Talk too much. It said, why died? We're going to read Job 3:11, 12, and 16. Why die I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me? Or why the breast that I should suck? Or as a hidden, untimely birth, I had not been as infants, which never saw light. Job is a man afflicted with intense physical pain and mental anguish. He intends his words to affect his demise. Job wants to die. Here he moves from cursing to questioning. The simple question, why, can be so provocative. We are easily tempted to think God is offended when questioned, but God is not offended by our inquiries. Instead, He invites our questions, encouraging us to learn of His ways. Questions are common in the Psalms. Why do you stand afar off, O Lord? Why do you hide in times of trouble? My God, why have thou forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning? I will say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Awake, why do you sleep, O Lord? Arise, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our afflictions and our oppressions? Therefore, Job's raging dialogue should not be interpreted as faithlessness. He's a man with profound questions and needs of answers. Job is passionate, dreadfully earnest, and transparently honest. He tells God exactly how he feels and what he thinks. A sentimental and shallow theology will not do. He needs an understanding of God that embraces and makes sense of suffering. Job questions the futility of human existence. If it is the human plight to suffer, then why be born? A stillbirth is preferred over this kind of life. Why should a child be nourished by his mother if it will later starve to death? If tragic suffering is our plight, it would be better for the mother's womb to be a grave and her milk be poisoned. In Job's suffering, he prefers the day of his death over the day of his birth. He wishes he had never seen light, a metaphor for being hidden away in the darkness of the grave. You know, it's not wrong to question God, but we all do it. You know, like I say, you know, it's sometimes we just ask God, why did this happen to me? You know, and I'm sure he asked God many a time during all these trials and tribulations he had and all this sickness, God, where are you? You know, why did you leave me? And but you know, it's just like it said here. You know, even Jesus asked God, you know, why have thou forsaken me? You know, and God don't mind you asking questions. You know, it's nothing wrong with it. You know, but like I said, I've questioned it myself. You know, why is all this going on? Why have you, you know, why do I have to suffer through these things? You know, but we all have to do it. You know, the Bible says, like I said earlier, we go through these trials and tribulations, but He said in His Word He'd see us through them all. You know, so you know we're not going to meet our end if we have a little bit of trouble here and there, but it's good to know that we can call on his name and get on our knees and ask him for to help us, but that's what we have to do, we have to hold on to him, not turn our back on him, because, he hasn't done anything, for us to turn our back on him. He's still going to take care of us, but, like I said, it's just human nature. As long as we're in these fleshly bodies, we're going to wonder, about things like this. But we're going to try to read one more. I got just a little bit more time. We'll read Job 13, 15, 17 through 19. For now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest. With kings and counselors of the earth, which build desolate places for themselves. Or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There comes a time when the pain and suffering are so intense that death becomes a welcome friend. Job's body is racked with pain, and his mind is filled with conflict. He has abandoned hope that life can be meaningful. Death is the only answer that appeals to him. In death he will find that for which he longs, peace and quiet. He reflects on the tombs of the rich and powerful and prefers the silence of the cemetery over the noise in his mind. The ruins of ancient tombs are to be preferred over houses filled with gold and silver. Death is a master over rich and poor, great and small, righteous and wicked. In death the troubles of life cease, the weary are at rest, and slaves are freed from oppression. In this regard, death is a gift from God, which Job will receive with gratitude. Job is suicidal. He is on the edge, but stops short of killing himself. He continues to maintain a sense of integrity in spite of his hopelessness, but just barely. Those who study human psychology say the greatest stressors in life are death of a loved one, especially a child, divorce, major illness, or tragic injury, or loss of employment, and subsequent financial trouble. Job suffered all possible stressors. Most of us have experienced some of these stressors or know someone who has suffered multiple stressors and expressed anger and hopelessness. Many of us know someone who suffered so deeply that they opted for suicide. The story of Job offers wisdom in helping those who suffer deeply. We must allow them to express their pain and suffering and engage in that conversation. We must listen and speak carefully. Above all, we must never dismiss their anger and depression. We must take seriously all threats against themselves. Like I said earlier, just Job still had, he'd rather be dead than to go through all these situations. And the Bible says, that it's appointed for once a man to die, and once we die, we're going to be in a better place if you're living right, and you're going to go to heaven if you're saved, and there won't be no more sorrow, no more pain, no more of that, more sickness, things like that. And that's what Job was wishing for. He just wanted to be out of all the that he had on him. And I know I would have felt the same way. Just Lord, take me on. Just let me go. And like the lesson said, those people that they get in such a bad shape, they opt for suicide. Go ahead and take their own life. And what really gets me is some of our young people. They take their own life. I know of two of Amber's friends. Her age, that killed herself, shot herself with a gun, and it's so sad to see our young people, and the world's full of it, the devil's got our young people, a lot of them, they take suicide rather than, that's why we have to get our children in church. That's where they need to be. And, maybe if we had all our children in church, maybe there wouldn't be as much, suicide in the world, with our young people. And, like I say, on the phones and things, a lot of them killed themselves because of their classmates and their peers, talking about them and, saying bad things about them. So, they just opt to kill themselves, But we don't know, like I say, what's going through someone's mind. And they say there's always some kind of a sign, that they're going to kill themselves. But, sometimes we don't know, It's hard to say, but that's why I say we need to really pray over them and pray for our loved ones. And if you know someone that's sick or contemplating suicide, try to, talk them out of it. But like I say, we need to really pray for our young people. I'm out of time. I better hush.